Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 144. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday. Steelers Nation, hopefully you didn't miss us too long. Had the emergency podcast episode on Thursday discussing the agreement between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers, the team announcing it themselves. 1-year deal last night. Rodgers will officially sign that contract Friday after flying into Pittsburgh, taking his physical. So essentially signed, sealed, delivered Aaron Rodgers saga, at least in terms of the will he, won't he sign. That one closes. Now the one about how he'll do in Pittsburgh in the 2025 season opens up and begins. Dave, just sleep fast. How you doing?
I did sleep a little fast. I'm doing fine. I hope you are as well, too. Happy Friday to everybody that's listening. I think the biggest development since we did the show later on Thursday night is, and you mentioned it, the fact that the Steelers have announced that they have agreed to terms with Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year contract pending the completion of a physical. But the big news within that announcement, they have when's the last time you've seen them have a Photoshop picture of a player in Steelers gear that they signed? Because that's actually in the tweet. I can't recall the last time that they or if they've ever done that before.
They didn't do a DK whenever they announced that trade?
That's a good question.
I don't recall. I can't. It's all a blur to me these last couple months.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't see the number that they have him in, but they got him in a white Steelers hat and, obviously a Steelers jersey. So I found that at least for me a little interesting there, and they've already got the some highlight clips up on the Twitter feed and all like that. So yeah, barring him tripping down the stairs, getting off the plane or something like that, and not being able to pass the physical, obviously this thing should go through. As far as money goes, there's no hard, fast contract details. Last night, Jerry Dulac seemed to indicate that money was never an issue, that the contract was always going to be 1 year and under $20 million. So there's that supposed starting point. And then Ian Rappaport this morning on Good Morning Football seems to think that the money will come in around $10 million or so with incentives. So I don't know about you, $10 million to under $20 million is quite a large range. And what did Russell Wilson sign with the Giants? I think the base value of the deal was like $10.5 million. And then obviously there was some incentives involved there. We'll see. Here, let's hope we get the details of this today, Alex, and not have to wait through the weekend and that kind of thing there. But I think that's where we're at right now with this thing, waiting for him to obviously come in and sign. And I'm guessing there will be pictures up of him inking the deal and that kind of thing. And we'll wait to see when his first media session is.
We'll know contract specifics sooner or later. So what we do know, 1-year deal. Rodgers agreed, coming into Pittsburgh today. Will attend minicamp Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They'll break for their summer vacation and then return for training camp. Report July 23rd, first practice July 24th. The things we don't currently know, as you said, the exact contract details. As you noted, Rappaport putting it around $10 million with incentives. We discussed incentives briefly in the emergency episode yesterday. And as you also referenced, we don't know Rodgers' jersey number. I'm going to say it's a safe bet he'll take number 8, the one he wore with the Jets. That's currently occupied by Corliss Waitman. Probably pretty easy to get that number off of him. Probably won't get number 12, considering It is unofficially retired by the Steelers for Terry Bradshaw. We know Terry Bradshaw's feelings about Aaron Rodgers, so I don't think they're going to be friendly, and Rodgers will lend it out the way that I believe Joe Namath offered to lend out his jersey to Rodgers, in which he declined with New York. So I'm going to guess, that $10 million range up to incentive language and a number 8 jersey coming for Aaron Rodgers.
If I'm Corliss Waitman, I'm trying to get at least a new car out of this if I can. Hopefully he just doesn't snatch it off of him. Do you know who I am? But we'll wait for the specifics. There's no way he's wearing 12. There's no. I would be shocked It'd be one of those most shocking things in a while. I think if he gets number 12.
But it would be kind of an Aaron Rodgers type of petty move of, you want to make fun of me for chewing bark and all that kind of stuff, whispering to the gods, I'll wear your number. But I don't think it's going to get to that point until the team's going to issue that. So it doesn't mean a whole lot in terms of what number he's wearing. The only number that matters is a win total for the Pittsburgh Steelers and a 1 win at least in the playoffs. And that's why Pittsburgh has been so patient waiting for Aaron Rodgers. And that is the hope and the goal for whenever he signs and plays out this season to break this playoff drought for the team and for himself. Rodgers has not won a playoff game since 2021, so long time coming for him as well.
I guess the only other route he could go number-wise would be number 3, right? But I suppose Corliss Waitman would shift to number 3 if Aaron Rodgers does not go the number 3 route.
I guess he could take any number that's not taken by an established player. Obviously, wouldn't take DK Metcalf's 4, but I'm going to assume it's 8 until told otherwise.
Yeah. All right.
Any other thoughts on Rodgers now that you have a full night to digest it, but we've had 3 months to think about it. Have you had any different thoughts or feelings about this imminent signing that'll be signed and made official today?
I played around with a little bit of tape last night and all, and saw some throws to the middle of the field and researched kind of his longest throw air yard wise was like 50 something, 51, 55, something like that, actual air yards. And that came against the Bills last season on the end of the first half. Hail Mary to Allen Lazard. That was the one that Allen Lazard got it, it kind of got ripped out after he hit the ground, and I think they reviewed it and deemed it a touchdown catch. That was the only completion he had of over 50 air yards overall. Looked at some other things, some middle of the field stuff, just overall arm strength, medium type range, and I don't think he's as accurate of quarterback as he once was, but I think there's still some accuracy there. I think there's still some velocity there. I think the ability to kind of move within the pocket is still there. You see him on some design rollout stuff. I mean, I imagine to some degree he'll still be able to get that stuff done. I haven't dug into his sacks or anything like that, or the interceptions and all, but look, I mean, I would term him as an extreme game manager, obviously with his experience and things that he's seen over the years. I think he can obviously still manage a game. The arm strength, I don't think you're going to see him throw a lot of 50-yard passes in Pittsburgh, but he can easily get the ball down there 42, 43, 44 yards, that kind of thing there. I think the velocity is still fine. And, as I kind of mentioned it last night, I would expect a turbo version of Mike Tomlin type football, rock fighting style, play good defense, run the football, don't turn the football over, and punch this thing in when you get down in the red zone. Hopefully you pick up a couple more explosive plays through the air than you did last several seasons here, and obviously limit. We talked about the sacks and whether or not that would be over 40 last night, and how it definitely can't be 50. He still takes a couple of sacks that just you would think just get rid of the football type of thing. You know, I noticed a couple of those going through some things. But I mean, look, this is a guy that's not opposed to throwing to the middle of the field. There was even one, I think, against the Jaguars where he throws back against the grain. You know, I don't know what was it, 6-7 yard, pass. So he's still a very aware quarterback. It will be interesting to see once we get into this thing how much autonomy that he has. We had some of the conversations, I guess, later last year about Russell Wilson and how much autonomy he actually had. And I think if you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers partially because of the experience that he has in this. And I think Arthur Smith's going to have to kind of loosen the chains some and accept the fact that he's got a guy that is probably more times than not going to get you in the right play, and you're gonna have to roll with that. If he sees a safety creeping down or get some pre-snap recognition that way and can get you out of one run play into a pass play to take advantage of that, you're going to have to. This is part of what comes along with Aaron. He might go rogue anyway on you, and you just might have to accept that kind of deal. One thing that probably isn't highlighted enough is the pre-snap cadence and all like that. How many times over the years, and we've even seen the old Mike Tomlin wink and nod, and is he gonna hurry up opposing defenses seeing somebody run off the field, that kind of thing, and get a penalty that way? How many pre-snap jumps is he going to get because of that cadence of his those are just some of the veteran things that Aaron Rodgers brings with him that age is not going to diminish, in my opinion.
When you said a couple minutes ago, extreme game manager, is that a positive connotation, a negative connotation? Can you explain that?
I mean, I think it's a positive. I just think that he knows how to manage a game, especially when it comes to situational stuff. And no, I for a guy his age with his experience, I would hope that would be viewed as a positive.
I just know in NFL vernacular, game manager can be a dirty word sometimes, and so I didn't know where you were going with that. Just wanted to make sure I was at least clear on what you were referring to.
No, I mean I think that's a good thing, with him, especially for a team that's going to want to run the football. You think a lot.
Yeah, he's the guy, like I said, who takes care of the football, but can hopefully still make those high-level plays frequently enough to get this offense to be an above-average unit. And they were number 16 in scoring last year, and it didn't even feel that good to be wholly average when they struggled so much down the stretch. And so that's the blend, that's the marriage where Rodgers takes care of the football, makes smart decisions, but is able to make some of those high-level throws down the field. Pittsburgh has largely been missing for several seasons. Even late in Ben's career, you didn't get some of those plays. And I think what's exciting about Rodgers on the optimistic side is you have somebody, as you said, Dave, who can really work from within the pocket. And when was the last time Pittsburgh had a quarterback that truly made plays and maneuvered around the pocket effectively? Even guys like Fields and Russ, that wasn't their thing in terms of having a great pocket presence to slide and step and keep their eyes downfield. You didn't get that obviously with guys like Pickett and Trubisky. And I think Ben, obviously late in his career, he was a pocket passer simply because he could no longer move. His legs were shot, but was he great in terms of maneuvering in the pocket? Not to the level and way and strategy, I guess you could say, that Rodgers plays with. And so if he can stay clean, if the offensive line can protect him, if he can have those clean pockets to play from solid and sound base, then yeah, you're going to see the best of Aaron Rodgers, which is true for any quarterback, I know, but it's really important for a 41-year-old quarterback, 2 years off an Achilles injury that really isn't mobile anymore. He's got to be able to play clean so he can just operate and move with his arm.
Yeah, and within that, with the pocket management, and although you don't want this guy taking tons of hits. We talked about the ones even last year with the Jets and all like that. I thought Matt Bowen had a good quick kind of synopsis on Aaron Rodgers that he posted, after the Steelers signed him or agreed to terms with him last night. He wrote, the arm strength accelerated vision are still high level. Rodgers identifies coverage rotations with ease, delivers the ball on time using his quick release to target smaller windows. He writes declining pocket poise and movement skills limit his ability to extend, create at a consistent rate. He goes on to say accuracy is beginning to slide due to lower body attrition. As a pocket thrower, Rodgers fits in a Pittsburgh offense featuring quick game play action elements. Now, we see Rodgers, I think on the tape, especially from last year, the play action from the gun and all like that. I don't know how much play action from under center you're going to actually see, especially if carried out properly and turning your back to the defense. I'd be surprised if we see a lot of that with Aaron Rodgers at this stage of his career. But I thought overall that was a pretty good, quick, and dirty summation by Matt Bowen about where Aaron Rodgers is at right now in his career.
Yeah, that's basically my summation as well in that video breakdown I did and the commentary I've offered over the last couple of podcasts where, yeah, you can still make plays from the pocket. Like I said, some of those physical tools are diminishing beyond just the mobility. I mentioned yesterday some of the off-platform when he has to throw off base, you really see, that arm not able to really kind of carry him through anymore to the degree that it did in his prime, which is natural and expected and can happen for any 41-year-old quarterback. Most of them don't get to that point to still have that talent to even play and survive in the NFL. So Rodgers has beaten the odds overall on that. But, you wonder in the fit of this offense, I think about, is he going to bootleg? Is he going to be doing some of those kind of core concepts that is pretty part and parcel to the Arthur Smith offense? Is he functionally mobile enough to do that, especially over the course of a season? You kind of wonder in terms of those things, can Rodgers operate the Smith offense, or will Smith have to tweak it again? And every good OC, every good coach has to tailor to his personnel. But the feeling was with Arthur Smith this year, this would be the year he could run his offense, get Caleb Johnson, get this offensive line to be what he wants it to be, to run more outside zone, to kind of work his core concepts. We've heard so much about the offense being not really his vision last year, having to dial back what he ideally wants to do. Is that going to have to happen again to make it work with Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, I think they'll obviously give it the old college try, with rolling them out. And, look, the better the running game and the better you can get flow going one way and boot them out the opposite way, we'll obviously give them a little bit of time. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that actually happening, but I think you will see some elements on it, especially to give them some half-field levels type of reads and those kind of things there. But when you do that, if it breaks down on you, you can't eat it for a sack. And one thing that stood out with Russell Wilson with me last year was all those throwaways, all those kind of wasted plays. But then within that, you don't want reckless. Well, I got to make something happen here either, throwing back towards the middle of the field and just trying to make something happen where you end up turning the football over. So I would imagine we'll see some of that, Alex, with the rollouts and all, but will it be as much as probably what we've seen in the past in some ideal situations with Arthur Smith and going back several years when things were clicking in Tennessee? Probably not.
Is that a concern, though, that Arthur Smith can't run the offense to what he fully wants to do in his first 2 years as OC?
Well, good offensive coordinators make their money by trying to adapt adapt offenses around to what quarterbacks do. So that'll be the true testament,
Sure. No, I agree. I think every OC has to do that, especially in season when injuries happen, unpredictable events occur. This guy didn't play well. This guy's emerging. How do we make all those things work on the fly? But there's something to be said about I think the great offensive coordinators get to run the offense they want to run. I don't know how many times a great OC has gotten to run an offense that is different than what his philosophy is, what he's been coaching for and scheming around and planning for, throughout his entire career. So there's always a balance, of course, between working with the personnel you have and your own ideals. But at some point, you have to be able to sit there and say, I want to run the offense in my vision so we can fully understand, am I a good offensive coordinator? Am I the right fit? Am I able to to bring this offense to its greatest height. And that still may be a concern in Pittsburgh in 2025.
Look, with the quarterback options this team, had, even rolling back to the decision on Fields and Russell Wilson and whomever, Mason Rudolph, whomever, this offense has got to have that offensive line take that next step this year. I mean, it doesn't matter. They've got to be able to run the football. They've got to be able to pass protect in obvious passing situations, and probably a little bit more so because of the lack of mobility. I mean, Aaron Rodgers took off with one of those in that game against the Jaguars last season. I think he got 12, 14 yards and all, but it was painful to watch, like Matt Ryan. It wasn't to that degree of the Matt Ryan, but they're going to have to run the football. They're going to have to protect Aaron Rodgers. They're going to have to get themselves in manageable situations. You just can't, as experienced as Aaron Rodgers is, you can't expect him to go out there and convert a lot of 3rd and 8s, 3rd and 9s type situations. If this team can run the football, get those safeties either up in the box, or, it's going to make Aaron Rodgers that much more effective overall. Once again, you've got a very smart quarterback here, and by using, I probably should have termed it extreme quality game manager. I mean, you got a guy. Okay. If you just you're right. If you just throw out game manager out there, it can be taking more time. People think, oh, we got Alex Smith here.
Yeah, Brock Purdy, always just a game manager.
Right.
I didn't think you were being negative with that, but I know how it could be interpreted, so I just wanted to let you clarify that comment was all.
Right. Look, Brock Purdy, from what I've seen so far, is pretty damn good quarterback. I mean, you get a guy that's got the adjusted net yards per passing attempt number that he's had so far in his limited career. Man, give me those numbers all day long. Here's the thing, and let's look at Aaron Rodgers just from adjusted net yards per passing attempt number for his career so far. Now, last year it was 5.87. The final year in Green Bay, it was 5.95. Those numbers, as we've talked in the past, right? Those numbers those numbers are the numbers. I mean, if you look back at the last 2 true seasons that he's played, 16 games in 2021, 17 games in 2024. Both those adjusted net yards per passing attempt numbers average out to about 5.9. That, plain and simple, that's not going to cut it.
And your benchmark in terms of the number that he needs to hit and Pittsburgh needs him to hit is what, 6.2?
Yeah, 6.2. I mean, that would be the low side. I mean, if you go back to the 2 previous, the 2 quality years, the final 2 quality years that I guess you could say that he had in Green Bay, it was 8.89 and 8.0. Am I expecting it to be there? I think a happy medium here, boy, to give it to me at like 6.75 or 7.25, between that range, and you might be cooking with gas here.
Russell Wilson last year is 6.39 on that number. Obviously, that had kind of a yin and yang to it from whenever he took over, mid-season to the end of the year. But yeah, Pittsburgh looking for more, no question about that.
I mean, if you're just getting once again, if you tell me right now that Aaron Rodgers for 17 games comes out of this with a 5.90 just net yards per passing attempt, I mean that's not going to be good enough against this schedule.
I mean, I assume he's going to get the ball out quick, and I think you're going to see Steelers running backs catch a bunch of passes this year. You saw that with the Jets last season. Breece Hall and the other guy was Braylon Smith. They combined for 75-plus receptions on, I think, near 90-plus targets. And so ball's going to come out quick. When there's pressure, Rodgers will find his check down. So I would expect that yards per attempt to be down a decent amount because of that, because you're going to see a lot of the quick game, a lot of the check downs, maybe some more in the screen game with an athletic offensive line. I think running backs are going to catch their fair share of passes, kind of get back to maybe something production-wise like the Le'Veon Bell days, where you have not where one running back's going to catch 70, 75, 80 balls, but collectively, Warren's going to catch 50 passes and Gainwell's going to have 25 and Caleb Johnson's going to chip in 10, 15, something like that. I think the running backs will be pretty active in the pass game.
Yeah, and they need to be, especially especially if you're going to be using a lot of more heavier personnel groupings and all like that.
So any other final thoughts today, at least, on Aaron Rodgers? We already discussed it pretty extensively yesterday, kind of have all of our initial thoughts 3 months in the making out there on what he'll offer Pittsburgh.
I'm just interested to see. I don't think it's going to be boring. I know a lot of people saying I'm not watching Steeler games now that Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. I think it's going to be very very intriguing to watch this play out from not only the on the field aspect, but the locker room, media, everything else that comes along with Aaron Rodgers. It's not going to be a dull season. They're going to win some games if he stays healthy. I'll go back to this. This gives them the best chance and probably provides the most, at least outward sign to the rest of those veterans in the locker room that look, this is we missed on Kenny Pickett. We tried to put some experience and some pedigree quarterbacks in this thing last year with the combination of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. We're with what was out there for this team to chase as far as the quarterback position goes. I think this gives them the best chance at trying to get in the tournament and winning a playoff game.
How good of a chance is that, I guess, is the ultimate question for the Pittsburgh Steelers and for Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, that's a tough division. I mean, do I think this team can depending on how things go, if they win a game or two that many people would probably have X'd off for them, can they get in the tournament? I mean, I think there's a chance as long as Aaron Rodgers stays healthy and that this offensive line does what many hope that it does, and the defense can find a way to solve their run problems. I mean, I think we're looking at some 23 to 20 ball games. You still have arguably the best kicker in the NFL, and you got a quarterback that's seen and done a lot. I mean, so I Aaron Rodgers gives them the best chance at doing that. The thing is as we talked last night, is it all right? You get to hang another winning season banner in the locker room, and they're one and done in the playoffs, and they're picking 22nd, 23rd, 21st overall. Are you right back to where you started again? And I think that's the biggest concern most people have. Okay, it's good, but how good is it?
Right. I guess the one thing we've talked about a little bit, but maybe not as much in yesterday's pod and today, is just how do you think the overall locker room will react to Rodgers? No one's surprised by this. It's been expected, but just in terms of him actually being there, his presence, his relationship with teammates, how do you think that's going to go?
I think it all depends on him. Hopefully he can maybe learn from his experience of switching teams. Look, this is a guy that probably thinks that he deserves a lot of respect. Caleb Johnson was not even 2 years old when
crazy.
Aaron Rodgers was drafted. I looked at half of this roster. More than half of this roster wasn't even 5 years old, right, when Aaron Rodgers was drafted. This is a guy that how does the saying, his reputation precedes him, I guess, and all. You've already missed the OTAs and all like that, and these guys are probably tired of being asked about Aaron Rodgers. If I'm him, I try to just low key this and just try to come in there and be a leader and not be, hey, I'm Aaron Rodgers. I try to teach as we go along here and say, look, this might be my last run. Let's try to let's all do our part here and try to get this thing together and try to prove a lot of people, try to prove a lot of people wrong here. I think how he handles it, especially in the down times, will be significant. Especially when he meets the media and gets on McAfee or whatever, but he just can't go in there. I thought Max Starks kind of put it pretty decent on Sirius last night there. He's got to win over these fans, and
How do you do that? Isn't it just winning? Isn't
yeah,
winning cure all, or is there
winning,
something more?
win, as Adrian told Rocky, win. Winning solves all of it.
Is there anything else he should be doing? Is it not making the comments, calling out teammates? Is it something where there's some communal aspect, or is it just simply just about, I mean, obviously it's all about results, but is there anything additional he should be doing? Because to sit there and say, well, if Rodgers wins, people will like him. I mean, that's true, but it's also pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay to make these corrections behind closed doors. Just, you don't want them pushing people out in front of the bus, I don't think, on a weekly basis. And look,
Right.
this is a young enough offense. There's going to be mistakes, right?
Right, which is why I wanted him in OTAs. I'm not going to harp on that too much. It's all spilt milk, but the more reps you can get with these young guys, I thought OTAs was less about Rodgers learning the offense, but guys learning about Aaron Rodgers, because that's a whole school in itself, is trying to play with this guy that's a 4-time MVP that brings a high level of expectation and perfection and detail, and that's all well and good, and that should be the standard in Pittsburgh. I welcome that, but you need reps for a guy like Roman Wilson and just that young group overall. So yeah, there's going to be mistakes, and I think Rodgers has to understand that his situation. It's a lot of new. Still, it's a new look offense in many respects, and he's new to Pittsburgh, and there are going to be some growing pains, and we can't pull the ripcord at the first sign of trouble.
Right. Well, I mean, look, anything less than coming out of this season, without a playoff win is going to be considered a disaster, right?
Or just more of the same at the least, in terms of this purgatory of this team trying to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic of you swap out quarterbacks and get the same results. And that's kind of where this thing's been going for the last several seasons. How do you think he'll be as a leader? Do you think he will be able to effectively lead this team beyond just producing and winning?
I mean, that's a kind of a loose question, right?
What do you mean?
It just that's kind of what we just talked about. I mean, he is what he is, right? I'm not expecting him to come out and be Russell Wilson in these interviews and all like that. I mean, I think he'll be a good teacher. Who was it, Clements, that was on one of the radio stations and saying that he's not as standoffish with the other quarterbacks as maybe the narrative might be out there.
Yeah, Tom Clements, one of his former coaches. And yeah, I do think Rodgers has gotten a bad rap to think that he's a terrible teammate or refuses to mentor guys. And I made the point, and I think Clements made it too, that, when Rodgers, I think has been a mentor because he knows what it's like to be on the other side. When Brett Favre kind of gave him the cold shoulder when the Packers drafted Rodgers to be his eventual replacement. And so I thought, well, I'm sure Rodgers didn't love the Packers taking a quarterback and selecting Jordan Love, coming off a year in which the Packers went to the NFC title game and felt like they were so close to going back to the Super Bowl. From what I can tell, and I hadn't done the deepest dive into it, but Love and Rodgers had a good relationship. There wasn't animosity there the way that there was with, say, Ben and Mason. So I think Rodgers will be a good mentor to someone like Will Howard. Will it be, like some PBS special where he takes him under his wing and there's some transformative thing? Maybe not, but I think whenever Howard has questions, Rodgers will answer it, and certainly there'll be a lot of learning by watching what Aaron Rodgers does, how he prepares, and a lot to be gained for a guy like Will Howard.
Look, I mean, you can't. Hopefully, we're not getting in. The things that you hate to see was early last season with him kind of pushing away Robert Salas and. I could do without those kind of things.
Yeah, I forget. There was a lot of context. I forget the whole story. If there was even a thing, if that was blown out of proportion. But I get your point. Yeah, I mean, what he says on McAfee, does he throw somebody under the bus? The whole Mike Williams redline comments. Something will probably come up throughout the season. But I mean, I think on the whole, Rodgers will be a decent teammate and a good guy. I don't think people will dislike him, but it just, want to make sure that when things get tough, how does everyone react? And Rodgers will have to be that leader because it's a young offense and they're all going to be looking to him. He's going to have to understand that this is his show, even if it is for just one season.
Now, look, when he's in these pressures and all like that, he's one that likes to control the flow of these things. He's not going to get himself walked over in these pressers either.
No, but in fairness, and I don't want to be the ombudsman. What's the word? Ombudsman for the media. The Pittsburgh media does not ask the most hard hitting questions in the world. I think he got more of a bristly welcome from the New York media than he'll get in Pittsburgh.
Okay. Here's the long and short of it. Is this the best that the Steelers could have done coming out of last year into this year? Is this the best that the Steelers could have done at the quarterback position?
In terms of all of their options, like Fields, Russ, everything that could have been on the table?
Fields, Russ, I guess Darnold, Gino.
Okay. So you're saying like starting from February, not, post free agency, just from when the offseason began.
Yeah. Is this the best that they could have done for 2025?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think Pittsburgh would say so. They tried to bring back Justin Fields. So clearly he was number one on their list. And at best, that puts Rodgers number two. I think certainly he would have liked to bring back Fields and have some more upside and have the run game element and see what you can do in year two and have him as a full starter going into a season. I still thought there was a case to be made for Russell Wilson. Not that it was a great option or even arguably a good option, but there was something to be said about knowing what you can get with him, not going to have the distraction and drama and some other things and the baggage that Rodgers may bring to the Steelers. And I did really like the chance for the continuity to have a quarterback return for the second straight season, build upon something instead of starting over from scratch as Pittsburgh does year after year, which does not harbor success overall. I know that maybe Russ and Arthur Smith wasn't tenable, wasn't going to work, but I think there were better options. I think once Fields came off the board, and if you told me that there's just no way that Russ and Smith are going to make it work, Russ cannot be an option, then yeah, Rodgers became the best of the very few and not very good options remaining. I liked him better than Kirk Cousins. I liked him better than going with Mason Rudolph for a full 17-game season. So my standpoint is it was not the best option. It became the best option of some bad options by mid-March.
Here's the thing. When you roll back to what Art Rooney had said originally, it certainly sounded like it was going to be Fields or Wilson, didn't it?
Well, they explicitly said that. Khan said it. Rooney said it. Absolutely.
So what happened? What changed? Was it the guaranteed money with Fields? Was it just Fields not worth the money?
We'll never know for sure, probably. Financially, certainly the Jets had a more competitive offer, at least by a little bit. And I think maybe internally Fields said, I got benched midway through the year. I didn't like that. I want to go to a place to New York that feels like they're going to start me wire to wire without me looking over my shoulder. So I think those were the two factors that led Fields to go to New York. And with Russ, Pittsburgh just lied. They just had to say that at the time because they couldn't sit there and say we're all in on Fields and we're not going to bring back Russ. You just couldn't publicly say that from a leverage standpoint, media standpoint. And so that was not truthful, clearly. So that's what happened there on Russell Wilson.
All right. I'm interested to watch this play out. Once again, I don't think this is going to be a boring season. I kind of wonder how many people who say they're not going to watch will actually end up watching.
Most of them, I assume, especially if they're winning. It's going to be a show, one way or the other. It's going to go well or poorly, and we're going to be here to talk about it. We'll be watching, you and I, Dave, that's for sure.
Or could it be just right in the middle on what it's always been?
Oh, yeah. That's also kind of my expectation. Like I mentioned yesterday,
that's the biggest fear that I think fans have at this point. We could have done this same thing with Mason Rudolph,
and we did it with Russell Wilson last year, essentially. So that's kind of my thought. I had this comment on Twitter before we started the show. What is best case scenario with Aaron Rodgers? We talk about middle ground and what if it all goes wrong, but what is best case? You get in the playoffs, you win a playoff game.
I think the best case scenario is you get into playoff games and the tournament So something happens. You win a game. You get the ball to bounce your way in one or two more, and somehow you end up there in the AFC Championship game. I think that's best case scenario. I mean, you got a quarterback that's been there and done it a lot. You got a defense that at least you would think is going to keep you in some ball games, right? And
Sure.
you obviously got trust, or you're trusting that that they've made some right decisions up front with this offensive line, that guys like Broderick Jones will take that next step, and Fautano will be what you need him to be, and you got a very good center now on this offensive line. So I think best case scenario is that you're playing in the AFC Championship game.
Okay, even accepting that, what are the odds they go to the Super Bowl?
I mean, obviously not great. No.
Right. So I just say that to say that yes, you could make some progress as a franchise, get that monkey off your back, and I'm all for it, and I'm sure the team is as well. But where does that leave you in 2026 then? We have a 42, then going on 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Will he return in that scenario? Who knows? It's impossible to say. But then you're kind of starting over and going in 2026 and saying, okay, what now? That was a decent year. We beat some expectations. We broke that streak, and that's big, but what's next? What now? And that's the question. And that's not a radical thought. We all know his age. We know it's a one-year play overall. So I'm not presenting some sort of brand new thought here, but I'm just acting out, okay, what is best case with Rodgers? You have some success, you win a playoff game, maybe two, and then you're starting from scratch in 2026.
Well, here's the thing. We get asked all the time about the 2026 quarterback class, and it's just, what if the quarterback class just ends up being not that great? They can't get themselves in position to go get the top guy, whoever that might be.
Mhm.
How can you sit here and make plans this far out right now? What if Aaron Rodgers comes out and plays, and we see from a couple of years ago, and he wins some ball games and gets this team a couple of wins into the playoffs? Do you consider riding that train one more year? I know people want us to talk about the what if with the quarterback class. Why can't they also ask the questions about what if Aaron Rodgers has his best season he's had since his, second to the last season in Green Bay?
Right. And I know this year's saga
I mean,
dragged
the
on
odds
for
of that obviously happening are, but I mean, what are the odds that, what are the odds that this quarterback class ends up being junk, you know?
or even just okay, where you got 2, 3 names at the top where Pittsburgh's probably frozen out because whoever's picking top 3, top 5 isn't going to move out of those spots. And so Pittsburgh just gets frozen out. I mean, it doesn't have to be a bad draft class for Pittsburgh to potentially miss out on landing a name. The Colts will probably be in the quarterback running next year, too, and they got a bunch of draft picks. So add another name to the list of potential suitors and teams who'll be doing their homework alongside Pittsburgh. Yeah, I mean, I know this saga this year dragged on until June, but you would like to think that before the draft next year, Rodgers will have an answer for you on his future. Will he retire? Will he want to come back? And maybe that'll be really obvious based on how well or how poorly the season goes. But yeah, you can't completely discount that either. I mean, even if you pursue a first round quarterback, it doesn't 100% preclude you from bringing back Aaron Rodgers on a 1-year deal. Maybe you want that rookie quarterback to sit for a season. Who knows what could happen? So again, I'm not presenting some sort of thought that has not been expressed before by you or anybody. What does Pittsburgh do in 2026, and who do they pivot to at quarterback then? But it is a thought, knowing that you're very unlikely to win a Super Bowl this year. It's a 1-year play. What is the best case scenario look like then? It looks like a playoff win, and then going, all right, that was a fun year. What's next?
Look, Aaron Rodgers obviously has a bad taste of his mouth and didn't want to go out the way that he went out last year with the Jets, right? And he obviously thinks he can do better than he did last season there. He has a lot of motivation for his final 2 years not to just be, oh, this is just another case of a guy not knowing when to say when, right? Uh, oh, remember those final 2 seasons in New York, and that final season in Pittsburgh, where he was just a shell of him of his former self. And yeah, I mean, you see it all the time in sports, right? Guys just don't know, and teams don't know when to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of motivation, obviously, for Aaron Rodgers within this thing, and he obviously still thinks that he can get it done at a high level. So we'll see.
Right. It is a bunch of we'll see, but I still wonder even if we map out the best case of that we'll see.
Quarterback purgatory is hell.
Mm-hmm. And Pittsburgh's finding that out the hard way. But I mean, it's a franchise that I was looking at. Who was whenever Bradshaw retired in '83 and '84? Who were the quarterbacks that year? I think David Woodley and was it Mark Malone? And so they obviously went through
Tom
that
Zach
big.
was still in there, wasn't he? Or what was he?
Yeah, I mean, it was a
Somewhere?
whole hodgepodge of names over the years, and so
And
we
you
know
even
that.
get into 2000 with Kent Graham and but I mean, you go through the mid to late 80s and all those guys. I mean, Todd Blackledge was a Steelers quarterback, Kent Graham, Woodley, Mark Malone,
Jim Finks, list goes on and on. Yeah.
Tom Zach, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Tommy Maddox. I mean, you stumbled on. I mean, who would have thought Tommy Maddox would have done what he would have done? That one season.
yeah, there was a resurgence in the Tommy gun era that was brief but bright for that short period of time, and Slash and Cordell, all that kind of stuff. So this is not to say that these are any radical thoughts here. And I'm sure every Steelers fan understands the position Pittsburgh is in, but I'm just mapping it out, and doesn't always mean giving some sort of like novel, big brain thought, but it's just acknowledging the reality of, next year will be next year. And as you said, yes, of course, the plan is ideally get a quarterback in the first round next year. But as you said, those things easier said than done. There is no guarantee that's going to happen, especially if you're competing with a bunch of teams picking top 5 and you're picking somewhere, say, 17, 21. Now, I've always advocated for Pittsburgh to trade up. That can't be an excuse, but it is going to be more difficult to get that blue chip quarterback if you're picking in 21st overall and the Colts are picking at 2, that kind of stuff.
What was the narrative when Brady went? What did you think about the Buccaneers' chances when Brady left New England and went to Tampa Bay?
Trying to think back, that was COVID year, I believe, so it was just a weird time in general. But my thought was they're going to be Super Bowl contenders because Brady's going to bring that really high level of standard, which he did, and guys are going to meet that level, and that's basically how it turned out.
And Brady was how old at the time?
I will check in his 40s, 42 or so, probably. Played to age 45? I will get you that information.
I mean,
he
did Brady
43.
have the biggest arms, had the most arm strength at the time? I mean, he never was really regarded as a super, in other words, you were relying on his experience. And did they have the best offensive roster at the time?
I'd have to check. I mean, he brought over Gronk, and so he brought in one of his guys that could still play a little bit. Yeah, obviously Brady was never physically the most gifted quarterback, and that's not why he became, Hall of Fame quarterback and the quarterback that he'll go down in history as. But I mean, what separated Brady was that and people will hate here's talking about and kind of glazing Tom Brady here on a Steelers podcast, but it was that work ethic, it was that determination, that competitive fire that I'm going to be the best and I'm going to gain every edge possible. That's kind of what separated Brady. And Rodgers is very intelligent and a really smart quarterback, but does he quite have that dogged mentality that Brady has? I don't think anybody else has had that mentality quite like Brady, so probably not.
All right, of all the veteran quarterbacks in the league, kind of where would you rank him in those aspects of it? The dogged mentality, the smartness, the Tom Brady qualities, if you will, outside of actual taking snaps and throwing the football?
I don't even have a good criteria to begin evaluating that. I don't want to.
I mean, that's what's allowed Aaron Rodgers to hang around all this time, right?
Yes, but Father Time.
I'm not trying to compare him 1-to-1 with that, but I mean, where does he rank with the quarterbacks in the league that brings those kind of things along with him to a new team?
I mean, I get it. Yes, he's smart to work hard. I'm not questioning that, but does he have that Brady Mamba mentality? And I don't think it's quite there. Like, I mean, Brady threw 40 touchdowns at 43 years old. No one expects Rodgers to do that, right?
I would think so. How abrasive do you think Tom Brady was going into Tampa Bay after the success that he had all those years in in New England.
I'm sure very much. Like I said, it's similar in the sense, yes, those guys set a really high bar, a really high standard, and guys have to meet that. But it just isn't the same with Brady and Rodgers. With Rodgers, there's more baggage. There's like Brady was just football 100%. Not saying it's good or bad, right or wrong, but from a football standpoint, he was a robot. Rodgers is not defined by football, which is fine, but it's just not the same thing. Brady was all in, 100% working. I think he skirted some of the COVID rules to try to go in and get some work. Rodgers is missing OTAs, taking until June. It's just, to me, it's not the same comparison.
All right, so your biggest fear is Rodgers is not as all in as, say, a Tom Brady.
Well, like I said, I think very few had that Brady mentality. I think that's what made him who he was. But yeah, I think it's fair to say that those are not the exact same guys at that stage of their career.
All right.
Because again, I don't expect Rodgers to have the renaissance that Brady did in his 40s. I mean, he threw 43 touchdowns at age 44, was the MVP runner-up. I mean, it'd be unfair to expect Rodgers to even come close to that.
I mean, what if Aaron Rodgers leads this team to 11-6 record? Is he? I mean, I forget even what the comeback player of the year rules are these days.
I think it's now for injury, but I don't know. The voting's weird, but you can win whatever award he wants. You give me 11 wins, I'll be happy.
All right, I would be as well too.
All right, Dave, anything else on Aaron Rodgers? We do have other non-related Rodgers topics to talk about today. Had this reported signing that's about to be official not come down the wire yesterday. We'd be talking about Gabe Davis, some other roster moves, Donald Parham. I was literally writing up Donald Parham as Aaron Rodgers came in. So some other Steelers-related news. What do you want to start here first with?
Just roll through them. Yeah, roll through the Gabe Davis visit.
Before Aaron Rodgers came to Pittsburgh on Friday, Gabe Davis visited the team on Thursday, left without a contract, and so he remains a free agent. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport providing some color today, saying that knee not 100% healthy yet. Davis not quite ready to sign, and so we speculated that was the reason why he left the 49ers and Giants without a deal. We figured Pittsburgh probably wanting to check in on that knee, kind of get to know you more so than let's get a deal done today. And so Davis leaving without a contract, maybe can sign before training camp of Pittsburgh in their pursuit of adding some weapons for potentially Aaron Rodgers to throw to. Davis right now is not the guy. Maybe he'll be later, but not right now.
Yeah, and we kind of wondered. I mean, obviously they took a look at that knee and all like that. Kind of wondered if this was more medical than anything. I'm not shocked that he left town unsigned.
Yeah, that seemed to be the expectation, just because I thought it was pretty safe to assume the knee was the holdup, getting that failed physical when the Jaguars released him last month, and then taking those other visits without a contract, without getting a deal done there. So, is that more concern though to know that knee's still not right after that injury in November for a guy built on speed? It's hard to say, obviously, but for Davis to succeed wherever he signs, he's got to be able to be fast and be explosive downfield. That's been his calling card, and so that's going to be the thing to watch going forward.
Yeah, and we'll see how it plays out. I mean, typically in the past, a lot of guys, when they leave town, they never come back. But there have been some cases where guys have come in and then 6 weeks later, especially if they're coming off injuries, they end up signing. So we'll see.
Things that happened to Quan Alexander mid-camp 2 years ago, and usually that's because of a money thing. With Davis, the issue is not financial because he's going to play for the minimum. The Jaguars are on the hook for that contract,
right.
And so the issue is not getting to agree to contract terms. It's just fit and health, and we'll see on those things. If Pittsburgh does not add Gabe Davis, and even if potentially if they do, they're still in the market for adding some offensive weapons. We've talked about Jonnu Smith plenty. Last week, there was some buzz on Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, some pretty vague reports indicating that teams were checking in on Kyle Pitts. No one had put a other team to that. No one had said what teams were inquiring. Ian Rappaport, really in passing, kind of a side comment, but it certainly caught our attention, Dave, mentioning the Pittsburgh Steelers had at least placed a phone call to Kyle Pitts in addition to visiting with Gabe Davis and having a phone call and conversations with Miami over Jonnu Smith. So the first real reporting linking the Steelers and Kyle Pitts. Now, to be clear, there was no indication a trade is imminent, no indication the Falcons are truly shopping Pitts. We talked about him, I think, on a recent show, Dave, but add Kyle Pitts into the mix.
Well, look, if you're going to call about Jonnu Smith, you might as well call about Kyle Pitts, right?
Yeah, you might as well kind of explore options and see what's out there. I think it just reinforces the idea that Pittsburgh is trying to find the best pass catchers possible, not just pure wide receivers, although that's the most logical way to replace George Pickens. I think Pittsburgh this time of year, whenever it's June, your talent pool is pretty thin out there. You got to be creative, explore all options. And we knew the connections between Jonnu Smith and Arthur Smith. There were, of course, connections to Arthur Smith and Kyle Pitts. He was in Atlanta. They worked together for several years. He was the first draft pick ever under Arthur Smith, taken 4th overall in 2021. And so some easy dots to connect back to Pittsburgh.
All right. We'll see if anything comes to fruition with Jonnu or Pitts or any other maybe movable tight end out there.
It'd be interesting, though, because Pitts felt like he never quite and still hasn't met expectations in his career. Now, he would be more that move tight end that could be athletic, that would be treated more like a Freiermuth who could stand up. And so there's a receiver element to his game that you're going to get more probably than even say a Jonnu Smith. But, would this work in Pittsburgh? Because Arthur Smith was criticized, and I don't know exactly how valid the critiques were or not for not getting Kyle Pitts the ball enough in Atlanta. And so bring him over to Pittsburgh with this quagmire of tight ends. Will it be any better here? I'm not sure.
Yeah, especially a team you want to run the football, you would think, and you've got DK Metcalf that you're paying a lot of money to that you got to get the ball to. You got Freiermuth figures in. You just talked earlier about the running backs being active in the passing game. He'd probably feel like he's a little bit underused if he ends up in Pittsburgh.
Right, and the concern I would have is that he has been disappointing.
And what are you going to give up for that? To get a guy that you're going to give 40 targets to.
Right. And the combination of the trade compensation for a guy on an expiring contract for a team that is loading up on draft picks for 2026, there's always a balance between winning now and winning for the future. But I don't know. I mean, Pitts would be interesting for sure. There's some real talent there, but give up, I think it's going to take a 3rd-round pick to pry him away from Atlanta for a guy on an expiring contract. I just, with these tight ends already in Pittsburgh, I don't, that doesn't grab me. I'm not saying I hate it, but I don't sit there and say I get excited about the idea. Let's go make this deal happen.
I think there's a better chance of them getting Jonnu Smith than I do Kyle Pitts, and I think you would agree.
Yeah. Now, I will say these if a trade happens with either guy, it probably won't happen for a little bit. The Falcons probably want to hang on to their guys, see what their other guys are doing this spring. The Dolphins are still in talks with Jonnu Smith, but you could trade for those guys pretty late in the process, and they could probably pick up the offense fairly quickly because they're both familiar with the system Arthur Smith runs.
Where does Kirk Cousins go now? Not that it matters. Minnesota?
I have no idea. Minnesota makes sense. My guess, and I haven't given it a second thought since the Rodgers news came across. Some quarterback will get hurt and he'll get traded. Does he go to the Colts with Anthony Richardson with his shoulder injury? I have no idea, but not Pittsburgh, and that's all that really matters.
Boy, well, whose situation would you rather be in right now? Pittsburgh's quarterback situation or the Colts situation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'd probably take Pittsburgh's. I think better quarterback play overall. Richardson just feels like that's just not going to work. It's just, it's gone belly up. Didn't work last year. Got the shoulder injury now. Daniel Jones, no thank you. So, yeah, I'll take Pittsburgh's situation.
Aaron Rodgers 8-3 against the other 3 teams in the AFC North for his career.
Okay, that's good. I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, 11. I guess 11 games. Yeah, doesn't play the North too often.
I think 3-0 against the Browns, 3-1 against the Ravens, and 2-2 against the Bengals for his career.
How did he do? Did the Jets play the North last year? And they played Pittsburgh. Obviously, was that because of the rotation, or was that just a one-off? How standings finished out to have those 2 teams play each other.
That's the way. That was the old where you finished in the division part of this standings. I think because I think he only played the Steelers in the AFC North last year.
Okay, so the East did not play the North last year, so I didn't know if there was other recent examples. What was the last AFC North team he played prior to Pittsburgh last year? Obviously didn't play in 2023.
It would have
Anything in
been
2022?
2022. They opened up the season against the Ravens and lost. He beat that was the year they played all four AFC North teams right in a row there to start the season. He went 2-2. He lost to the Ravens. He beat the Browns and lost to the Bengals as a member. No.
In
I'm
22,
looking
I'm
at the
confused.
Jets. I'm looking at the Jets. I'm sorry.
Yeah, in 22, he didn't play any
Let me
AFC
switch
North
it.
teams.
Let me switch it to the Packers. No, in 2022, let's see, 2021, he beat the Steelers in week 4, beat the Bengals, beat the Ravens, beat the Browns. So he swept the AFC North in 2021 as a member of the Packers.
All right, there you go. So would love to see a sweep of the North again. That was that 13-3 season for Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Dave, let's see what else do we have. The procedural note here, no surprise. Donald Parham, like I mentioned earlier, he officially went to injured reserve, tearing his Achilles on Tuesday, so his season is officially over. He cannot return. He will not be eligible to have his window open because he's placed on IR before the season began or before, roster cutdowns in late August. So the Achilles injury alone was going to tell you he was not going to come back this year, but for anyone wondering, he is officially done, and unfortunate for him.
Yeah, we'll see about the split salary. We'll know that pretty quick. It should come out about, I think, a little over $500,000 with him, as we talked about the other day.
And with Rodgers signing, with Parham to IR, and the other transaction we'll talk about, Pittsburgh should have one open roster spot remaining on their 91-man roster, that exception because of the international player in Julius Welshoff.
All right.
The other transaction I just mentioned was a safety swap. Pittsburgh signing former Bears safety Quindell Johnson to a contract and also releasing Joshua Bledsoe in a corresponding move. And so Johnson had gotten a cup of coffee with the Bears. I believe that was 2023, appeared in 9 games, picked off Blaine Gabbert at the end of a blowout loss to the Chiefs. He's also bounced around with the LA Rams, but has not played in a game since that one season in Chicago, mostly on special teams, but got some defensive reps as well.
I looked back on our site. They had brought him in for a visit, a free agent visit. Did you look back at that?
I did not.
He was in another post of ours. If you click on his name on a tab there.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. This was last year. Was this?
I think it was.
Okay, so there was already some interest there, and now they finally brought him in.
One thing I forgot to look about on Bledsoe, whether or not he was might have been waived injured or not. I forgot to check that last night. Let me double check. No, he was not waived injured. He was just a straight waive yesterday.
And that was last September. Pittsburgh worked out, and that was whenever they signed C.J. Henderson. It was him, Deshaun Jameson, who they also signed and is currently on a futures contract, and Quindell Johnson. So all 3 guys, Henderson, Jameson, Johnson, became Steelers at one point. Henderson no longer a Steeler. Jameson currently one, and now Johnson is as well.
All right.
So some safety depth there. Obviously, tough path to make to 53. You have your safety. You have pretty much 4 safeties locked in off the top, and Fitzpatrick, Elliott, Thornhill, and Killebrew. Then you have guys like Sebastian Castro trying to make it. Whoever else emerges, but Johnson, some NFL experience could do him well, and if he lands on the practice squad, that's probably good for Quindell Johnson to begin 2025.
Here's something interesting. Sometimes they put visits on the on the more public side of the NFL transaction sheet.
Mm-hmm.
They have J.K. Dobbins visiting Denver, but there's no Gabe Davis is not listed. I don't know. Sometimes they list these things, sometimes they don't. I find that interesting when looking at the sheet here.
Yeah, we'll see if he shows up today. I couldn't tell you if there's an oversight, if there's some other reason. I don't know what all qualifies.
Because all the reporting was that he came in and that the Divas were, what if he didn't go? How much egg on the face would they have if he didn't make it in yet for whatever reason?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, was he on the day before sheet? Because I think he was technically flying in to Pittsburgh Wednesday and then was going to formally visit Thursday. I don't know how that gets put down in a procedure standpoint, but I doubt it. I'm just spitballing. Maybe he showed up the day before.
I got the sheet up from. Oh no! Wait. That's the. Why does that say 4? That can't be right. Hold on a minute here. 5:25. Where is?
I mean, I think Rappaport said that he had come in, so I'm assuming it happened and it just didn't make the wire for whatever reason. Maybe he shows up today, or maybe there was just some other oversight.
Okay, here is. I'm not seeing any visits on the main sheet here.
Okay, well, I'm not sure. I'm gonna work under the assumption he came in and the knee still isn't good until told otherwise.
All right. Where else
And
do we need to go here?
in other just very brief, boring procedure-related news, I've been checking the Steelers site for any changes in the coaching staff, any changes on the scouting side. That's pretty common post-draft for teams to make changes. I've not seen anything. The NFL or the Steelers website can often lag behind and be pretty delayed in updating its information in terms of personnel. But so far, no changes. It would not be a shock, though, if the group stayed intact. There was a lot of turnover the last couple of years. There was a lot of turnover last year. Several guys left. Some guys retired, including Phil Kreidler. Some guys brought in. And so maybe a season without change in terms of adding any new scouts or any other personnel additions or subtractions.
All right. What else
Dave,
do we have?
OTAs, the team practice yesterday. So it kind of gets forgotten about, obviously, for understandable reasons. But Pittsburgh wrapping up their OTAs sessions last week and this current week finishing up. So they'll return to the field on Tuesday. Obviously, no huge takeaways overall from OTAs. We hear some positive buzz on a lot of the young guys, Darnell Washington, Roderick Jones, Roman Wilson, etc. But what are your takeaways, if anything, for these 2 weeks of OTAs?
Well, supposedly a lot of people look faster.
Best shapes of their lives.
It's so hard to read into what actually happens, on the field there in OTAs, especially when you're not there. More concerned about people staying healthy and hearing about, things like, Broderick Jones switching sides and how that's going. I think one main takeaway, and we've kind of hit on this, a couple of times, at least everybody seems to know where they're going to be playing this year, especially on that offensive line. We've heard people talk about communication quite a bit, especially on the offensive line. And I think more notable, the guys that obviously haven't been there. I know Cameron Hayward was back for the final 2 after, I think, missing on Tuesday. Has Chris Boswell been there at all? Alex, this is something that I kind of
you were redeemed. You've gotten your redemption, I think.
Kind of wondered about. Not so much redeeming. I was just kind of wondering if he would be there. It doesn't, because I think they tried to play gotcha with Cam Hayward and say, should we expect anybody new or back for mandatory minicamp, and obviously trying to get him to tip the hat on Aaron Rodgers. He said, no, I think Chris Boswell will be here. So that leads me to believe that Chris Boswell hasn't been there. I don't think I've seen any pictures of Chris Boswell there. Is this a big deal? No. But as I've stated several times this offseason, I have full faith that Chris Boswell will be at mandatory minicamp. If I hit him, though, I'm not kicking any footballs until they give me at least another $3 million in cash. I think they'll get something worked out there. I don't think I've seen Cordell. Have you seen Cordell Patterson in any of these pictures or videos and all like that?
I haven't. Is it the team telling him to stay away? Is that him just deciding I'm a veteran? My writing's on the wall potentially. I'm not sure. I imagine I'll be there for mandatory minicamp. Yeah, I was just kind of ribbing you because I ribbed you a little bit about Boswell last week, so I think you ended up being proven correct about that, and he should be there for next week, though.
I would imagine people are wondering, will TJ Watt show up for mandatory minicamp? I'd imagine he's going to show up, right?
Not going to do a dang thing, but yes, I think he'll be there. I think he'll report.
Ian Rappaport wonders if DK Metcalf will be there. Yes, I expect DK Metcalf to be there.
I mean, why would he not be? If Rodgers is going to be there, Metcalf's going to be there. So if he's not there, that's a really interesting situation if he doesn't show up, unless it's somehow excused where something came up. But he should be there. So it'll probably be full attendance. wouldn't expect Watt to work. Will Watt talk to the media? He does not usually prefer speaking to the media. I don't know if it's required if he has to or not, but I imagine someone's going to be trying to track down a quote from him and get his comments. So I'm interested to hear about his thoughts. I'm sure he'll say the right things, and which is to say he won't say much at all. Will he be asked about that Instagram story from early April? I'm sure he'll be asked about that. I wonder what his response will be to that question.
He'll probably just shake his head and say, "You guys got too much time on your hands."
That is a Watt
we'll
thing
see.
to say.
All this hyperbole about Roman Wilson and all. I mean, it's great to hear, and everybody looks faster, looks more comfortable, and all like that. But come get me, Alex, when you start your training camp reports.
I'll be there. We will be there for these practices, and really on that fifth practice because the first four are not in pads, and so it's still pretty similar to the OTA structure right now. And of course, that first in stadium, you shouldn't say first. Wilson has technically played in one game, but you know what I mean. The first real significant game action, which will get plenty of reps. Will he lead the Steelers receivers in preseason reps? He probably will come pretty close, if not at the top, Dave.
A buzzword I picked up on with the wide receivers using is grimy.
That seems to be the word that Robert Woods invoked, and other receivers like Calvin Austin are following. And that's why you bring in a Robert Woods, that veteran that's tough, a blocker, do all that dirty work. And yeah, I think Pittsburgh trying to get back their edge at receiver. You bring in a DK Metcalf, big, physical, strong. You get rid of some of the guys that didn't always play that way, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and you try to really get this group to be grimy. Do you want your receiver room to be grimy, though? I don't know if that's the ideal thing to get out of it, but it seems to be the phrase Pittsburgh is leading with.
Yeah, it seems to be the buzzword right now, at least at this stage of the offseason here. I'm trying to think what else. Obviously there's talk about how Caleb Johnson's working on pass protection and learning everything he can here. Come get me when backs on backers starts there. As I stated, and I've been holding off on, I wanted to get into the past mandatory mini camp, but I've got all the pass protection clips from last season that I'm going to be riding around on that. I don't, I think he's got something to build on when it comes to that aspect there. Imagine pretty good, hands. They could, we've talked about, will they use the running backs more? Seems to have pretty good hands overall, good after the catch and all like that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that sticks out from 6 OTA practices that I have not observed.
Well, we talked about Corliss Waitman. Let's talk about both punters. Cameron Johnston says he's fully cleared 100% from that knee injury last year. And I know we talked about him a little bit about beat writers saying he was booming the hell out of the ball during OTAs, but Johnston spoke. He's recovered, and so that's good to hear from a health standpoint.
Yeah, we hit on Cole Holcomb. Looks to be back raring to go, which is good news for him. Trying to think of...
Will Howard spoke yesterday, and I know Howard's gotten a lot of buzz this spring, but there was a comment, and it was kind of a conversation you kind of had to infer a little bit, but it sounds like Will Howard and rookie tight end J.J. Galbraith have hooked up a lot, had a lot of positive plays during these spring workouts, and so that's a guy, Galbraith, that I'll have my eye on, especially in light of the Parham injury, and I still think it's going to be tough for Galbraith to make the 53, but he's athletic, he tracks the ball well, he has good hands. He was a really successful receiver at South Dakota. Was it South Dakota State or South Dakota? South Dakota, just the Dakota last year. So that's a guy that I'll be watching on that I think has made some plays this spring, it sounds like.
All right. Definitely a guy that we talked about coming out of the undrafted free agent class to keep an eye on for sure. A couple of them tight ends.
I was excited about him and that opportunity. Those reps might open up. I imagine Pittsburgh will probably add a tight end, maybe with that last roster spot open to replace Parham, but Galbraith a name to watch come the summer training camp.
All right.
Anything else, Dave? Any other thoughts? Any other breaking news that we're getting? I know we hit the big breaking news yesterday with Aaron Rodgers. Should sign today. Like you said, probably get a good photo of him signing that contract, and he'll go back to California and then come back out Tuesday.
I guess Biddy Bishop's got everybody's ire for wiping his feet on the Pitt logo, huh?
Yeah, we barely talked about it or wrote about it. We had one little nugget on it because to me, this is just not a story relevant for a Steelers standpoint. This is more relevant for Pitt fans and WVU fans, but apparently Bishop went into the Pitt facility, obviously Pittsburgh. The Steelers and Panthers share facilities. He went in the Panthers locker room and wiped his feet on the Panthers logo. Bishop, of course, finished out his career at West Virginia. Big dust up there. To me, I could care less about the story. So I think you're in the same camp, so I really paid it no mind.
All right. Anything else we're missing here?
No, I think that's all. We can get to some reader emails and close out today's show.
All right. And let's see what we have in here. I don't think believe it or not, I don't think we have anything new in here, even after everybody's probably Aaron Rodgers out about right now. So looking through, I don't see anything new here unless let me hit update here. But I think we got everything that we read the other day.
All right.
Care of here.
Well, send some more in this weekend. Send some more Rodgers questions. But like you said, what we said about Rodgers is not new. It's really rehashed, and that's true for the entire media landscape. It's all that's been discussed for the last 3 months, and there isn't a lot of new ground we're breaking here. But once it's done, it's done. It's worth talking about, and it's just good to be able to have these discussions, not in these still slightly theoretical terms of, well, assuming that Rodgers signs and maybe he'll sign, and once he signs, all that kind of stuff. It's good to just have finality and people talk about it as it's happening instead of we think and we assume it's happening, but it hasn't yet.
I do have something else in here, by the way.
Okay.
See if I got the right date here. This came in. Let's see. I got a couple of them here. It looks like. From our buddy George O'Dottery, Dave and Alex, I imagine we are all glad the Rodgers saga is over. If they can get him for $10 million for 1 year, it's hard to complain about the signing. Having said that, I have to confess that I was against the signing of Rodgers. It's hard for me to imagine how Rodgers will help the team grow for the future. He says, I see Rudolph offering the better bridge to the quarterback for the future, but I'll be happy to find Rodgers proving me wrong. In addition to how Rodgers is going to take away snaps from Rudolph and Howard, I really worry about where Beanie Bishop is going to get his INTs this coming year. As always, enjoy the site podcast. In this regard, I watch with pride to see you guys become the premier site for Steeler coverage. Thanks for that, George.
Thank you, George.
A long time listener there. Yeah, look, I mean, here's the thing. If Aaron Rodgers cost $40 million for 1 year or $5 million or $10 million for 1 year, it doesn't it all come how much does price play into hard to complain about the signing, I guess, angle?
I mean, the cheaper you get them, the better you feel about it, obviously. But I think to the point you're making and you made before is not that much. Whether he was playing for $30 million this year or 10 M's this year, to use his vocabulary, there's no long-term commitment here. Pittsburgh had the money; they need to spend the cash, as you've talked about, and so the money really doesn't matter here.
The biggest thing that matters here, and once again, this is rollback kind of what we said is will this season be looked at as enough? In other words, above it, will fans have reason to get excited come playoff time? Really excited, not just the look. The standard of this team is not to get in this thing and win a playoff game and take it to the house, right? 1, 2, 3 Cancun after that.
Look at you with the internet memes you're picking up.
This will be regarded to, okay, they went 10-7, got in the playoffs, either won one or didn't win one and got bounced, and here they are back at 20th, and this class isn't great, and here we go again with the quarterback purgatory. We could have done that with we could have seen more Will Howard, right? Potentially, and then obviously on the backside of this, if they go 6-11, to think what. They just didn't do a good job organizationally of putting a team on here that would even compete. Went 1-5 in the division, what have you there. So, it obviously comes down to the product they put on the field and whether or not they're really going to be able to compete. And if 2026 they're back in the same quarterback conundrum and this just never ending purgatory type situation, regardless of whether you pay Aaron Rodgers 10 million or 40 million, I think.
Right. No, I
And
understand
that's
that.
the biggest fear, I think.
Well, that and also, like I said, what if it all just goes to hell in a handbasket where it's just toxic and it has that Jets feel last year? I don't think it's going to get to that point. As I mentioned yesterday, I think Pittsburgh has a stronger infrastructure to avoid some of the circus that is always around the Jets, and it was around the Jets before Aaron Rodgers. It may be there afterwards. It just seems to be ingrained into the culture there. I think Pittsburgh, as much as that word can be overused, the culture's stronger in Pittsburgh than it is in New York. Is it the best culture in the world in Pittsburgh? Probably not, but you get my point overall. On the point about the George made on the bridge, I don't know if Rudolph is a better bridge. I mean, a bridge is a bridge. What makes one bridge better than another? Rodgers is the better quarterback than Rudolph, and so that's kind of the calculation for the here and now. And I don't think it really takes reps away from Will Howard. Will Howard's not expected to play this year. If Rodgers didn't sign in Pittsburgh, they were going to go get another veteran of some sort, be it a Kirk Cousins or Carson Wentz or somebody to be the number two behind Mason Rudolph. I don't really see a scenario in which Howard was going to open up as the immediate backup to whoever the starter was going to be. So I don't think it really matters in terms of the bridge. I think when you have a bridge, you just want the best quarterback possible, and that is Rodgers based on the current guys available.
I haven't gone through and watched every game from 2024 from last year for the Jets. Why did the Jets go 5-12 last year?
I mean, how much time do you have? I mean, Rodgers was hurt through the first half of the year. He played. He never missed a game, but he had that nagging, I think, a knee injury. The O-line had some issues. There were some injuries up front. That I don't know. I guess the defense didn't play that well. They lost a couple close games. Their kicker missed a couple field goals. I think they made a kicking change mid-season, and then it just got messy from there. Coaches got fired. Ownership got in the way. It became a lot of drama, a lot of mess, and talent never was able to kind of coalesce. So it just felt like it started off on the wrong foot. Guys got hurt, and then things got really messy, coaching change, and it just kind of spiraled from there.
All right. Let's see. I got one more from Caleb that came in late here. Caleb, good morning, fellas. Best podcast in the business. Do you think the untimely injury to Shazier and sudden retirement of Tuitt set the Steelers back into defense? And if so, why? Caleb, I think, didn't you ask the same thing a couple of shows ago? I don't want to spend a lot of time on that because I know that we already addressed that. He's got a second part of this question here. Also, with Rodgers signed, do you think the Steelers make another move for a wide receiver? It seems like a lot of people's take is that we got worse as in offense, but if you replace Pickens with DK and add one more piece, it seems like we have more firepower than last year. I mean, I think assuming that Gabe Davis came in and you'd have to think that they're out there looking and maybe not necessarily receiver, but if you talk about the Jonnu Smith and the Kyle Pitts thing, and I mean, I think they're looking. Will it be another wide receiver? Will it be a tight end? All I will say is I think they're looking, and if Rodgers comes in at $10 million in cash, they're going to have a little extra money, I think, still to spend. I think some sort of another move is coming, either tight end or wide receiver.
Yeah, I think they're going to add somebody for sure. Who that is and how they're going to acquire him. I'm not quite sure. I should mention, by the way, Pitts had a foot injury that he missed OTAs for, so there's just another little element to consider as well. Not saying you couldn't trade for him or wouldn't trade for him, but just to put a little footnote on that. So, I think they'll add somebody. It's very similar to last year. We sit there and say they're going to add somebody. We don't know who, we don't know when, we don't know exactly how, but I think somebody will come in.
All right. I'll say this: when mandatory minicamp ends next week, someone that's at least one or maybe even two players not on the 91-man roster or 90-man roster, whichever one it is, come next week, will ultimately end up on the 53-man roster. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'll say at least one new face will make the team.
Will that be on offense?
Yeah, I think they're going to add they're going to add somebody before training camp. So I'll say on offense, sure.
All right. And will it be a skill position running? Probably not going to be running back, but wide receiver or tight end. I mean, there's only. I mean, I suppose it could be a backup tackle, right?
Well, I was going to say that you said skill position, so I was going to say, yeah, receiver, tight end, but offensive line depth, I still think could be addressed, and frankly, still needs to be addressed. And so I think they're going to look offensive linemen throughout the summer, potentially UFL guys, potentially the slim free agent pool still out there, potentially cut downs. I think we'll see an offensive lineman added. I think we'll see a offensive weapon, a pass catcher, be a tight end receiver added as well before September 7th against the Jets.
All right, we got 2 minutes here before we're officially at 90 minutes. Wouldn't be right if we don't fill it up. Overall, are you happy or sad? There is no in between here. Are you happy or sad the Steelers signed Aaron Rodgers?
I have no in between. These are my only two emotions.
You are either happy or you are sad.
Oh, man. I guess sad, because he was not high on my list of options back in February. I did that article about ranking the options, and Rodgers was not the lowest. I think Kirk Cousins was the lowest, but Rodgers wasn't super far behind. So if you're giving me only those two options, then I'll say sad.
I am happy.
What's the biggest reason why you're happy?
I think he can play the ultimate Mike Tomlin rock fighting game. I think he gives them the best chance to win that way.
The reason why I say sad, and again, that there's obviously a nuance to it where I'm not crying over it, but just to answer the question, it just because you were made in purgatory of this. Okay, another new quarterback starting from scratch. You're going to do the same in 2026. We're running in place, and that's kind of indicative of the franchise as a whole, as a team perpetually 9-10 wins, wild card, potentially get bounced in the first round, can't win a playoff game. And Rodgers in some ways kind of furthers and deepens that hole Pittsburgh is digging for themselves. That's why I say that. I mean, whenever the offseason began, Dave, where did you rank Rodgers on your list of wants and hopes that Pittsburgh would add a quarterback? Was he high on your list of guys you were looking for?
He wasn't on the list, really. I thought they were going to go down either the Fields or the Wilson re-up.
Right, me too. And so that's another reason why I say sad, because I sit there and say what you could have had with Fields. And for me, it really just comes back about you got to build something at some point. You can't just have a new quarterback every single year. There is certainly merit in admitting mistakes and moving on and not being married to a guy and having this kind of sunk cost fallacy. But there's also merit to eventually finding an option and sticking with it. And Rodgers is going to be that one year play that is going to start this process anew in all likelihood in 2026.
At what point do you think they would consider pulling the plug on Rodgers? Not injury related, and would they even consider it?
It would take a lot. I mean, I don't think that's going to be it may get talked about in the media whenever Pittsburgh stumbles. At some point, they're going to have some lull in the season, but I think it's going to take a lot to do that, because you're turning to, you're not turning to Will Howard immediately. It's going to be Mason Rudolph. You're turning to another veteran, and I really don't see it happening. It would have to go obviously really, really poorly. I think Pittsburgh would have to be eliminated from playoff contention, or Rodgers just says, I'm out. We're a 5-win team. It's November. I don't think that's going to happen. So I really can't map out a realistic scenario in which that occurs where Rodgers is benched for play reasons.
We mentioned in last night's podcast about the Steelers during the Mike Tomlin tenure had played one game that did not matter during the regular season. Will the Steelers add to that number in 2025?
No. I think every game will have meaning. I think they'll be in this thing to the end, because they almost always are in this thing until the end. That's that one meaningless game stat, which was back in 2012 shows. So I think they're going to, like I said, 9. My range was 8 to 10, but more realistically, more likely 9 to 10 wins in the hunt. It's going to be more of the same, I think.
All right. We'll get back after this on Monday. We've still got some Aaron Rodgers fatigue, post Aaron Rodgers fatigue to go through here over the weekend, I'm sure. And then Next week should be really, really interesting with OTAs getting underway and assuming Aaron Rodgers' first presser or media scrum or whatever. So there won't be a dull moment, I don't think, next week. But everybody have a great weekend. We will get back after it on Monday. As always, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Search out that 35-minute video that Alex had in the can that even mentions George Pickens being part of
Ignore that part.
been in the can, so at least you get that didn't go unused at this point. But it's a very, very good long 30-minute video on Aaron Rodgers and what Alex sees the Steelers getting with Aaron Rodgers. So make sure you seek that out on the site over the weekend, and hopefully you enjoy that. Once again, you can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button up right navigational bar. And we'll be back after it on Monday. Once again, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.